Hey everyone. In this episode of Elevate Your AIQ, I am joined by Pete Tiliakos, an HR industry veteran with roles as an HR executive, advisor, and market research analyst. Pete and I discuss the impact of AI on HR transformation, emphasizing continuous improvement, responsible AI practices, and AI governance. We call out the importance of trust, ethics, and discuss AI's role in HR functions like payroll. The conversation covers the need for upskilling and education in AI, the application of AI in organizations, the importance of critical thinking and judgment, as well as data and analytics maturity to underpin AI success. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Pete, and thanks again for tuning in.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Elevate Your AIQ. I'm your host, Bob Pulver. With me today is my friend Pete Tiliakos. How you doing, Pete?
Good. Glad to be here, man. Congrats on the show.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for spending some time with us. Why don't you give the audience just a quick background about what you're working on these days and how you got there?
Yeah. Well, most people know me today by my current work. The last 8 years, been an industry analyst now for going on my ninth year. I guess it will be eighth or ninth year. I used to lead research for Nelson Hall, some of the other analyst firms out there, and have gone off and created my own. And very well known for my work in the HCM, payroll, global EOR, fintech, and all the things kind of around the core side of HR. But all that's rooted in very much, I guess you could say, a 30-year career in HR transformation. It's really the only thing I know. I've worked in, I came up in the shared services world, transitioned into big HR outsourcing deals and HR outsourcing work with like IBM and TCS, and later consulting with Deloitte. But yeah, love what I'm doing now. I'm bringing it all together, and I think the exciting thing is, I was also a former practitioner. I led payroll and transformation for the Walt Disney Company for a time. And so for me, I think now seeing all of this come together, getting to research it, being behind the scenes of what's being built, and getting to talk about it and share it, super exciting, right? Just we've come so far. I wish I had any of this back when I was an HR leader. So yeah,
Right. Fascinating background, Pete. You and I think the one thing that you and I have in common, well, I guess I did have a short stint as a market research analyst myself, but as I think about transformation, you and I have basically been working on transformation or consulting around transformation
yeah,
for our most of our careers, and so I guess when we think about this age of AI, the latest industrial revolution, I forget where we are. We've fourth industrial revolution, fifth.
fifth or something. Yeah.
But as you think about what we're tackling today, like how do you think about that in terms of scale and scope and complexity compared to the transformations that we've gone through before that might have been either, within a particular domain or within a particular, line of business? Like how do you think about transformation today?
Yeah. Look, I think the thing about transformation is it should be always, right? It shouldn't be something we do once in a corporate lifetime, or, something that we do this year, but we don't do next year. It's sort of, I'm more of a continuous process improvement kind of person. I believe transformation is not a destination. I don't think it can be, especially in the world we're living in, right? I mean, the speed at which things are changing, the speed of expectations, the speed of data, and right, all of that is just making what we say when we say innovation, right? It's 1 minute to the next, it's something else, right? So I think with all of that, we have to stay very agile, very, very ahead of things. But I think it also comes down to people too, right? We forget that it's not just a piece of technology or some vendor that's going to magically solve our problems. I think the nice thing, and maybe even the problem too now, is you have more ways than ever to solve your problems, right? There's more point solutions. ERP has gotten powerful. HCMs have gotten powerful. There's plenty of ways to solve for whatever challenge you think you have, that everyone thinks is, is unique to them, and that no one else has it. I promise someone does. And maybe there's some of that you need to change and stop doing because it just doesn't make any sense anymore in the way of the world. And so I think there's a lot to that, right? I think it's harder because the people element has gotten more complicated for many, many reasons. I think it's harder because there's more ways to solve things, and there's more products, and there's more point solutions that almost make it harder. But what's interesting is that what hasn't changed at all are the problems. We actually did a podcast. So I have a show, right? HR and Payroll 2.0 with Julie Fernandez. And we did a show about a year ago where I had gone to the Biltmore Mansion. I don't know if you've ever been there. Have you seen it? You been?
I've heard of it.
It's the closest thing we have to a castle here in America, built way outside of its time, ahead of its time, with access to the means and money and innovation, if you would, air quotes, at the late 1800s that you can possibly tap into. And yet, when you go down towards the basement of the building, there's a really great workforce dedicated museum for the folks that built the Biltmore Mansion and its properties. And one of the things that they highlight down there are that there are three primary challenges that work site that was incredibly unique faced. One was productivity. Two was access to skills. And three was equality, inclusion, and just treating people with, better than we should have been at that time, for sure. And we've come a long way in all of those things. But guess what? We're still talking about exactly those same problems right now in every business. I don't care how big or small they are. So the problem didn't change. And despite all the technology, we're still dealing with the same thing, just a bigger scale and bigger problems now, more problems and challenges. So, challenge is all still there. It's just how we're going about it, I think.
That's pretty amazing to think that, 150 years ago, 5 generations ago, they were basically had already outlined
I know.
some of these things, and it's like infinite wisdom. But you're right. Yeah. Today, I mean, the objects are shinier.
I know.
And fancier, and information travels much, much faster. But you're right. We're still talking about skills. We're still talking about making sure we've got a human-centric sort of mentality to all the things that we do, including how we use and design AI solutions, which is a little bit ironic. But I do think this transformation, I agree with all your points. I think for me, it's, there's no one that's spared from an impact, right? Everyone's on their own journey, but whatever role you have, whatever seniority you have, and whatever industry you're in, AI and automation are going to impact you to some degree. And so the question is, how well do you adapt to that as an individual, as a team, and as an organization? So one of the things that I thought was interesting, I remember listening to some of your podcasts a while ago when we were talking about payroll.
Oh, yeah.
And I was struggling a little bit just because all my transformation experience has not been in HR. It's been in, supply chain and sales and distribution, and, to some degree, consulting at IBM. So I didn't fully have the perspective of an HR practitioner or an HR leader. And also because I was spending so much time with talent acquisition and talent management, solution providers, and some of those teams on the buy side, I just didn't have a full grasp of how AI was impacting like core HR, including payroll and total rewards and things like that. So you just like sort of unpack that a little bit, because you got into it, and your keynote, the virtual HR tech, was pretty enlightening for me. And I don't say that often, just because so many AI pitches when it comes to AI and HR, like it's just like, oh, like I could have given this presentation, right? Like I don't need to be listening to this presentation. I appreciate the engagement. I like to listen to other people's perspectives, because I think diverse perspectives are really important. But when it comes to that domain, I just didn't know a lot. So yeah, if you could just like unpack your perspective there.
Yeah. And thanks for bringing that up. That was I really enjoyed doing that. I think if you remember that in the beginning of that, I talked about the fact that last year at the HR Tech conference, one of the primary winners of the startup Pitch Fest area was a 401k transfer solution called Manifest. So just stop right there and digest that, right? I mean, we would all probably assume that that's just automated, right? That's just very simple. But if you've ever had a 401k in the recent 3 or 4 years, you probably know it is not automated. It's very time consuming. It causes a lot of loss in interest revenue and that sort of thing for the user. It's painful. Sometimes it's easy to get wrong. So when you think about that, there's a lot of flash to what's coming out around AI and a lot of myths and a lot of confusion. But what I think excites me the most is that the core HR side of things, right, that I presented on, the payroll, the time, the benefits, the maintaining your data, all of that is kind of the operational elements of HR that kind of have to do things, right? The keep the lights on stuff. But it's all necessary for setting up all the other nice things that the company wants to do around talent intelligence and talent engagement, and the many, many things that lead to operational excellence in their organization, right? Getting the right people at the right moments, all that. But that can't really happen effectively if you don't have a good foundation of data and an employee experience to help them achieve their goals, and a vehicle to support all of that great work and all those great processes, right? So I guess my point with that presentation is we've still got a lot of work to do for the baseline blocking and tackling, if you will, if we want to be able to set up touchdowns. And the reality of it is, in my opinion, is that the majority of the heavy lift in HR, that's where it's happening, right? Maintaining data, maintaining compliance, ensuring that everyone's reviews are completed and the raises are entered, and all the sort of things you have to do, again, to enable your organization to do the things you want to do. And so what I love about it is that, all of our lives, we've all had to been HR experts in order to use an HR system, and that's, I think, is changing, right? And that's where the AI is augmenting and bringing you to the right answer and the right click and the right page and the right thing every time, versus you as an end user struggling. And I think that's going to be incredibly important as we, continue to talk about the strain that we're putting on frontline managers, the ownership that employees and the autonomy they want for managing their careers and their experiences. So a lot of great things are going to come out of it. And I think it needs to set, and it is setting the foundation for all these really nice to haves, if you will, almost must have in, talent capabilities that you're going to need to lay on top of that. So set the foundation, right? Block well. Any team that wins any championship always talks about the core fundamentals, right? First. So yeah, I'd say that's the key here.
Yeah, I would say, I guess playing both offense and defense well is important, which kind of
Yeah.
takes me into the opportunities versus risks of AI and AI in general, right? Like when I think about playing defense in the context of AI, I think about responsible AI.
Mm-hmm.
I think about understanding the risks, and before you can really roll out on a broad basis, generative AI capabilities, whether that's co-pilots or GPTs or agents, let alone string those co-pilots and agents together into workflows and things.
Yeah.
You've really got to understand what some of those risks are. And so one of the things I was thinking about, the potential of anybody to be sort of a weak link in the data sort of supply chain as it reaches these AI interfaces and gives you an output that sounds.
Hey there, I'm Tim Boris, host of the Working Well podcast, where business strategy meets human sustainability. If you're an executive, a leader, or change maker ready to ditch burnout, build thriving teams, and drive real results, this is your next must listen. Tune in on the Work Defined Network or at timboris.com/podcast.
Sounds accurate. Sounds, like it knows what it's talking about, even though it doesn't. I think about the need to sort of upskill everyone, not just in how to use it and the basics of, what it does and how it's doing what it does, but how do you like to apply your critical thinking skills and making sure that people have some level of education around the fairness, the ethics, and really understanding the sort of provenance of the data, on top of course understanding the veracity of the data. Do I trust? How do I know I trust? This isn't a calculator, at least not yet. So it's not. Do we need compliance training? Just thinking about other HR kind of functions. I mean, as we onboard and do annual, compliance training, I mean, do you foresee that we would have responsible AI training, just like we have data privacy and cybersecurity training?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think this is when we think about like all of that I was describing earlier, right? It's going to create a lot of autonomy, a lot of guidance, and a lot of insights to employees and workers, or excuse me, and their bosses and their and the leadership, right? But all of that I think is going to come with an element of trust, and that's everything that you just talked about, right? Like governance and ethics and how we're using your data and how we're training you to use the tools we're giving you as an employer. And I think this is where the emotional intelligence and the soft skills are going to need to be emphasized, right? And elevated right alongside the analytical skills, because I think you're going to need humans to be able to not only prompt well, as you mentioned, right? And then we're not all going to prompt equally at the same skill set. That's where we're, hopefully, and we're seeing the platform providers build this stuff where it is fundamentally ingrained in the DNA of the applications, but also as user friendly as possible, right? Giving them the ways, every way possible to be successful. But again, I think the organization is going to have to build trust with how they use that data, train people to be able to spot anomalies and issues and question, because that's what we're going to have to rely on, right? As humans, knowing the process and knowing the proper outputs to look at something and go, hey, this doesn't really pass the smell test, right? I hear some of the things that are like, you've probably heard the crazy stuff with Google, right? Putting out AI images that just weren't historically correct. I mean, where was the oversight and the governance in some of that, right? I think you're right. There is going to be, I think, new roles that are going to be created around this, right? I mean, maybe we'll have a chief of AI, right? A chief of AI privacy or ethics. Who knows? I think that is going to be key. And I think the roles are going to shape around the augmentative element of this, right? And helping people be better with it and helping people be safe with it and trust it, right? And I think trust can be a big part of this.
Yeah, I think you're right. I've gone through some, AI ethics and governance training myself through a nonprofit. But one of the one of the core principles around like what you were talking about is how do you establish the right sort of cognitively diverse, committees that can provide some oversight. And it's not just, you can't just say, oh well, we have a legal team or we have a data governance team. We'll just pile this on top of
Yeah.
their plate. And it's not, this is bigger, it's different enough that you really need to make sure you're accounting for all these different use cases, because you never know. We can't always think of the possible ways in which people will use it for good or bad. And so the cognitive diversity, getting different perspectives culturally, geographically, demographically, you've really got to have, a broad swath of
Yeah.
people who
Yep.
can come together and say, this is an appropriate use case. It looks like we've got all our boxes, checked here, and let's make sure we continue looking at these things so that we're responsible by design. And when I think of being responsible by design, like if we had talked about this like 6 months ago, I'd be like, oh well, yeah, there's software developers, of course, just like they go through cyber reviews and data privacy and whatever. It's just another thing for them to do, and eventually it'll be business as usual inside DevOps and ML ops and things like that. But fact is, with generative AI and the ability for anyone to actually create a custom GPT or an agent, things like that, we're all now builders too, right? So it's not just about responsible use. It's
Yeah.
where did you get the data, all these things. So I guess it goes back to why I think this compliance training needed.
No, I agree. Yeah, I think there's going to have to be some real, strong and agile governance models, right? I mean, we're going to have to do a lot of learning and trial and error with this. There's going to be blunders. I mean, no doubt, right? And I think if we have to fail fast and learn fast and change fast, right? Pivot quickly. Because I think if you go down a rabbit hole, you could really cause some serious damage with this stuff if you aren't controlling it, right? So, at the same time, I say that, and then I say, well, I don't want to see too much over legislating either, right? Because you don't want to suppress innovation. So there's that balance. And I know I know the EU has some laws. We've already seen some states taking some bias audit type, things. But I think there's definitely going to be more. I just hope we don't suppress innovation, but at the same time, we do have to protect so much, right? There's a lot at stake here. I like to sort of, fashion it through the lens of the internet, right? I came in early career with the internet as well, if I'm dating myself there. And that was scaring everyone, right? Just the cut over the 99, 2000 switch was the funniest thing I think I lived through looking back on it. But like, I think there's a lot of that right now. And there's so much nascency and so much unknown and nebulousness about this, but it is going to move hyper speed faster than the internet did. And I don't think it's going to be one of those things where you can sort of, say like, oh, I'll be an e-commerce business tomorrow. I think you're going to have to be an organization using AI sooner than later. And if you don't, you won't keep up, right? I mean, if your peers are using it, your competitors are using it, you're going to find out pretty quick. So, yeah.
Sometimes I see similarities to some of those earlier official like
Yeah.
revolutions, but certainly the advent of of the internet, the advent of social media are some of the common, analogs that people come up with. And I do think there's similarities, but
Yeah.
What does it really take to lead with impact in today's ever evolving world? Welcome to Inside the C Suite, the podcast where influence, energy, innovation, and empathy converge. Hi, I'm Christy Honeycutt, your host. Join me as I sit down with the boldest voices in leadership, visionaries who are not just making decisions, but making a difference. In every episode, we explore the heart of leadership. How do high performing leaders harness their energy? How do they lead with empathy without losing their edge? How do they turn disruption into innovation and pressure into purpose? You'll hear unfiltered stories of adversity, resilience, and the raw moments that shaped true influence. This isn't about perfection, it's about presence, passion, and the energetic exchange that fuels transformation. Inside the C Suite is your invitation to lead from a deeper place with intention, connection, and courage. If you're ready to go beyond the surface and unlock what really moves leaders to action, hit subscribe and step inside. You can find us wherever you get your podcast fix. Inside the C Suite, well, we're an energetic exchange. Let's lead with influence, live with energy, and create with empathy.
Whether you're a payroll pro or an employee wanting to understand your paycheck better, we've got you covered. Tune into It's About Payroll for expert insights on payroll trends and compliance, or check out It's About Your Paycheck, the go-to podcast for employees looking to understand their pay and rights. 2 great shows, 2 great hosts. Listen now, brought to you by Work Defined, where payroll meets clarity.
like with social media, you could kind of go a little bit more at your own pace. You could, put up a website and have a Google,
Oh yeah.
listing and, things like that if you were a small business. But yeah, as soon as e-commerce took off, where we've found some utility to being online, there was that. But I think for the average worker, you didn't necessarily need social media as much as, unless you're like in marketing and
Yeah. AI is almost like electricity in the impact I think it's going to have. Yeah.
yeah,
More so like electricity.
yeah, that's where I'm going, because it's going to be, my job is changing right before my eyes. Am I going to make the necessary adjustments, or
Yeah.
am I just going to like give up and hope for universal basic
You,
income?
you look
Or
at something like Sora, right? I mean, what's going to happen to movies? I mean, have you seen the videos that are coming out of that? It's unbelievable almost.
yeah,
Yeah. So what happens to I came up in the media industry and early in my career. I'm kind of imagining like what happens to animation, what happens to so many things that we've taken for granted, that humans must do, and now we've got augmentation to speed that up and just bring to life anything that's imaginable almost. So it's exciting, but scary too, because you don't want to see I don't like the soul. There's a soullessness of the AI writing right now. So I don't want to see movies being made, that just have no, it's visually appealing, but not very deep. I think that's where humans will always have an edge, in that way, right? The creativity in many ways.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
And I think that can apply for a lot of, you know, not that we're focused exclusively on knowledge work, but I mean, even that phrase calling into question is terms of its longevity, right? Because if knowledge, once we've sort of codified all this knowledge inside an organization, where already there's probably less likelihood of hallucinations, just because it's not, internet garbage.
Yep.
But at the same time, to your point earlier, if you don't have a good data foundation, like and you try to build like a proprietary, LLM or small language model, and you try to do things on your own, you still need to trust that the data is accurate. Otherwise, if you build something like a conversational AI for HR, service desk or something like that, like the data is not right, then you're just scaling the problem. You didn't really solve
Yeah.
one of the core problems before you tried to scale that, and now everyone's basically trusting, inaccurate
Yeah.
information. So I think that at its core, I guess when we think about AI readiness of an organization, part of that ties back to their data and analytics maturity.
Yeah, totally. The good news though, I think is from what I'm finding in conversations I'm having across various sectors and, in my podcasts and I host the Source by Daily Pay as well. We get to talk to a lot of executives, both building tech and using it. And what I think is exciting is as you would expect, companies are using this on their front end with their customers, with their products, right? So they're getting some lessons learned that I believe are going to soon come to the back office and begin to make an impact, and they will have already learned on against their most valuable, well, not the most valuable, we could argue that people are the most valuable on the back end, but their most sort of important focus, right? Their customer and their product and their offering, their value proposition. So I think if they can test it against that, they can certainly serve it to themselves, right? In a way that they know themselves better than they know anything, and their people. I think it should be easier once you've tried it against the market, if you will, to then learn and come at it the other way and say, okay, well, now we're going to go and apply it to finance and HR and maybe IT, right? IT is a lot of opportunity there for co-pilots. So yeah, I think it's good.
When you talk to really any organization that's, sort of grappling with this, do you see them more trying to use it internally to improve like how they operate and make them more efficient or whatever? Or do you see them
Mhm.
really trying to figure out how to deliver more value and like almost disrupt their own?
Before we move on, I need to let you know about my friend Mark Pfeffer and his show, People Tech. If you're looking for the latest on product development, marketing, funding, big deals happening in talent acquisition, HR, HCM, that's the show you need to listen to. Go to the Work Defined Network, search up People Tech, Mark Pfeffer. You can find him anywhere.
Yeah.
Business model to provide value to their customers and prospects, or is it a mix? Like, what are you hearing?
Yeah, I think it depends, right? I mean, I think it depends on the sector as to the speed and,
Yeah.
and where they're focused. But for those executives that I've talked to, like for example, we talked to Sabaro. They're actually using robots to knead dough, but that's a great example, right? I mean, they're also using it, in their back office. But I think it's about it depends. It depends on the organization, but I think it's largely about targeting use cases that are going to make them more create a better product, create a more reliable experience, drive better outcomes for the customer and the product itself. All of that. Certainly efficiencies otherwise, right? That can lead to that, and some of that's back office, some of that is sort of in the value chain or the supply chain that they use. So I think it depends on the sector and the use cases that they're facing. You look in some tech sectors, right? I would imagine professional services. I haven't actually spoken to any leaders in that space in a little while, but I would imagine professional services is probably trying to help empower their knowledge workers. I remember working at Deloitte, and that the answer to your client's problem is there somewhere in the assets, but how do you search it and find it, right? Well, I mean, just that part, right, can make consultants much more effective at finding assets and applying them in their project or finding answers to some problem. So there's lots and lots of use cases. I do think it's sector based, at least from the anecdotal work that I've done. I haven't totally researched this, but and I think when it comes to the back office, it's largely coming just natively in the solutions
Yeah.
folks are upgrading to, right, or adopting.
Yeah, I
So
definitely heard. Well, I know that. I mean, there's already a published sort of story around McKinsey and what they've done with generative
mhm.
AI that they built, exactly to your
Yeah,
point, to basically bring all of that. I guess technically, Burson kind of did this as well, right, with their Galileo
yeah.
platform.
Oh
Although I
yeah,
think,
yeah. That's great.
yeah, so
Yeah,
that
good
that
example.
one's more geared towards Burson clients, I believe, whereas McKinsey's is for their own, to elevate their own sort of effectiveness and give that sort of
Yeah,
institutional knowledge from all those McKinsey reports and all previous engagements and put that in the hands of even, young McKinsey consultants. And so,
yeah,
so the net benefit or the net gain in sort of productivity is, is sort of weighted towards the younger folks, because you've basically got, the team lead kind of level person like at your side, as your sort of co-pilot, as you're sort of onboarding at the company, onboarding with the new client engagement and all those things. So yeah, I think what choice do professional services firms have, right? I mean, I think that's because otherwise you're going to get, your competition is investing. I think it was Accenture that invested like $1 billion in AI, and a lot of
Yeah.
that was for generative AI development and upskilling. So yeah, that's an existential threat to their business for sure.
I'm curious what happens when we all become hyper productive. Like, what do we do with our extra time? Do we all just get it back? Do you just get more work? Do you, I don't know. I'm curious to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things. I have a couple of thoughts there. One is when I hear these stories about productivity, first of all, we need to move past individual productivity, right? We work in teams and need to think about, how do we improve the
Projects and yeah,
end-to-end workflow, right? Like if you've got one cog going 10x and everyone else is going at the same speed and you're all part of a team, it may not work out so well long term. But the other thing is around like, it's not exactly aligned to like automation versus augmentation, but I do see a lot more value in augmentation and making better decisions. I mean, there was a recent survey from I think it was Data Camp that talked about where people are
Mhm.
seeing value for the companies that have invested in AI and are using it effectively. And it, productivity was up there. I think it was like 3 or 4, but the top benefits for the companies that have adopted, they're more, I guess, mature um, than others in terms of their adoption.
Yeah,
The benefit was better and faster decision making, or like the top two, right? So you've got to think about that, and automation will give you value and it will free up that time, but the real value is once you can reallocate that time that you saved by reinvesting it in upskilling or reinvesting it in more
oh yeah, yeah,
AI or whatever. Um, the question, going back to your point, like what do you do with the time that you saved? I mean, that's a question that every organization is going to have to grapple with. If we are confident that every single worker, and we've got say 10,000
Mhm.
employees, if every single one of them can save an average of 2 hours a week, what do we do with that time, right? And so my stance is this is a journey and everyone needs to continually upskill or whatever. And so
Yeah,
as a company, if you can recognize that benefit, then how are you going to reinvest some of that savings in the
yeah,
workforce,
yeah,
or making your organization more effective? But as an individual, I would challenge people, like if you find that you're using some tools and it's saving you personally a couple hours a week, why not reinvest some of that time in upskilling yourself with, oh, let's see, this saved me 3 hours a week. I wonder what else it could save me. I wonder what this other tool could do for me or whatever. But I mean, it shouldn't be, oh, I saved 5 hours this week. I'm going to go binge, Bridgerton, so it's, and I'm not saying we shouldn't, reap some reward for that increased, productivity, but I also think that
yeah,
it
yeah.
just, the point is it frees you up to do higher value activities. And I just think investing in your own professional development and getting more comfortable and more literate with AI tools uh, as it is one of those high value activities.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. I think we're definitely going to see roles change, right? I mean, they won't be that slack forever, and certainly those roles will become something maybe different than what it was, or maybe a cumulative of other things. So, yeah, that's going to be exciting, and maybe maybe selfishly, I'm thinking it'll sort of self fund the 4-day work week. Maybe we'll get Americans to come around to that. It would be nice, right, to have everybody kind of enjoying a little bit more family time, if we're getting work done faster, smarter, better. But yeah, look, I think you're right. There's going to be a lot of transition here, change management and skilling. It's not going to happen overnight, right? And so yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of self improvement. We're all going to need to be doing a lot of process improvement, a lot of process changing. Yeah, a lot of work to be done around this. But I think companies that lean into it sooner than later, and begin to invest in their people, it's not just tech, they're people, really helping their people be successful with it, and even helping them reskill, right? Not just reskill, but totally rethink, if you will, the way they do things. I think a lot of opportunity is going to come out of
Yeah.
all that. So
Yeah, for sure.
exciting, man. It's a little scary, but a little exciting too.
It is. No, I'm cautiously optimistic. There's a lot of good that this can do if we do it right.
We just did a survey, a sentiment based analysis on the payroll community, and we asked exactly this: like, how do you feel empowered by tech, and how do you feel about the future? And there was certainly some angst about what AI may or may not do, but the majority of folks were cautiously optimistic and excited for what's possible, and just hopes that their employers will digest it a little faster. That's one thing that worries me is we've got a lot of folks that still haven't transformed HR. They're not on a core HR product. We've got many payrolls that are still limping along. We've got lots of opportunity in the talent space. I mean, so much work still to be done, and now AI is probably, the new carpet getting pulled out from underneath your feet. But you got to move, right? You got to start basing yourself and getting stable so you don't fall.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a good way to put it. Is there any? You don't have to like name specific tools, but I mean, as you go about your day to day, because you get involved in a lot of different things. I mean, are there any types of tools that you've found most helpful?
Well, most of what I've been studying is being integrated at the HCM levels. But personally, tools that I'm using, I've been playing around with Perplexity, the search engine. I really like that. I'm finding myself using that more and more. I haven't subscribed to the Pro yet. I've been thinking about it, but I've also played around with the Copilot, Microsoft Copilot. I'll be honest, I've struggled to make some of the use cases work for me. I know there's still some progress still to be made, and I need to learn to prompt better. Don't get me wrong, but I'm excited for what it's going to do with Excel, PowerPoint. I think it's still early for those things, but yeah, I've been playing around with Copilot, Perplexity. What about you, man? Any cool apps you've kind of found you like?
A lot of the ones I've just been sort of tinkering with because I didn't love a lot of the output. I do have Perplexity. I like it because it gives me this, tells me where I found its information, right? Gives me the top 5 sources, but invariably I almost always just open the 5 and then show me the real source or whatever. And then I was like, okay, well, why didn't I just type the .com, and then it would have just taken me to the site instead of taking me. But no, I saw something yesterday that said the answers were a bit suspect in that it was,
Yeah.
I don't know if it was scraping some sites or it just wasn't providing the most reliable info or something like that. But I don't know. It seems like there's pros and cons to almost everything these days. Anthropic was getting in trouble for doing some scraping, just like ChatGPT was, and whatever. So I play around with different ones. I do like Claude. I haven't tried the new versions of Claude, but they're supposed to be excellent. I like ChatGPT just because it was easy for me to create some custom GPTs in there, as well as it just connects natively, in thread to like Dolly to create, images. I haven't found a good tool to create images that have words in the images because that's just a struggle. I've tried prompting it every which way, and it just still seems to spell words wrong. Like not even wrong, like they're just not words, right? It's like double A's and double whatevers, and it doesn't. Even if I put something in quotes, it puts in extraneous stuff. So it's we're still first inning, maybe bottom of the first at best.
Yeah. It's early, and look, be careful. I mean, to everybody out there, I'm not endorsing any of these products. Know that what you're putting in there is probably public, so be careful what you're asking it. But the thing I would say is to make sure that people know is that's not what's being done with these HR or enterprise grade solutions that you're buying. I mean, they're using technology. Maybe they're using ChatGPT. They might be licensing it on an enterprise level. Most of them are building their own, particularly the large enterprise players or Workday, UKG. They're building their own capabilities and have been for a long time. But know that they're not using publicly available data. They're using their depth of benchmark data that is sourced anonymously across their massive data set or client data sets, and then anonymized back, as well as commingling of data that they leverage from sources like Wolters Kluwer and various different compliance, the APQC and different sort of organizations that have credibility in certain sectors or processes or whatever. So you're not getting this public scrape, right? You're getting large language models built off of expert data, private expert data in their clouds and their data sets. So very differentiated from what your publicly available information in ChatGPT. So
yeah, no, I think it's good to be cautious.
yeah,
Don't take it at face value. It's not a calculator, and don't use it for health or financial
or homework.
or your homework. Yeah, that's a whole nother.
Do the math, kids. Do the math.
So Pete, I have one question that I ask all my guests, and that is, when you see the phrase elevate your AIQ or just even the acronym AIQ, what comes to mind in terms of advice to give the folks out there as they go on this journey?
Stay agile and keep learning. I learned that very, very early. I was in the military. I was a United States Marine. Adaptability and agility is all we do. And so we were taught to constantly be learning and absorbing and pivoting and prepare, constantly making adjustments to improve yourself. So now more than ever, you need to lean into these things, learn about it, understand how it can help you, and elevate your IQ, right? Elevate your AI IQ and understand lean into it, right? Look at it like a wave of innovation, right? Ride that wave and help it, let it help you. Don't fight it. No point, right? So make small adjustments, keep learning, stay agile, and you'll do fine.
Love it. Awesome. Well, Pete, it's been great to talk to you as always. Thanks so much for coming on and sharing your perspective and insights. Really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate it too. And congrats again on the show, man. I'm going to be a regular listener for sure once you get your episodes going.
Awesome. Much appreciated.
Yeah.
That's it. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time. Thanks again, Pete.
Take care, man.